Again, this is the participant sign in. The link was placed in the chat. It's been placed again for those who just got on. If you can please sign in, that'd be greatly appreciated. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Just a reminder, we are the Southern Inland Regional Technical Assistance Center, and we are here to help current grantees and potential grantees through our Assistance Center. Our community partners that we actually have is we serve 4 county offices, which is Inyo, Mono County, Riverside, and San Bernardino. And we have our core partners, which is Capacity to Impact, California School-Based Health Alliance, and Los Angeles Education Partnership. Next slide, please. This is just the vision of our Southern Inland Regional Technical Assistance Center. I won't read it, but we just always review it just to know that we are all here for the positive student learning outcomes and making sure that we're using this community schools framework as a strategy to improve our schools. Next slide, please. Our team has gotten bigger. We have added an additional coordinator. So we have our director, who is Jennifer Gately, our program manager, who is David Culverhouse. I am Ebony Kemp, one of the coordinators. We have Siobhan Monterosa, and we have our new coordinator to the team, Yvonne Moles. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this implementation grant application work group is just to make sure that you have everything that you need, all the information for your application so that you can become a successful grantee for the implementation grant that's going to be available for cohort 3 for years 24 through 29. Next slide, please. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to do our opening welcoming, and today our 2 focuses are the community schools implementation plan and our program budget worksheet, which are the last 2 sections that we will be going over today. Next slide, please. So here is our welcome ritual, and this is going to kind of give me an idea where we are all at. Where are you today on this scale regarding the completion of your implementation grant application? Pick a number and drop it in the chat, and that way that gives me an idea of where we're at as we are on this work group. I see a 0. Rebecca, you are funny. I see a lot of 6s. We're trying to race to get this done, it seems like. You're going to get it done, so no worries. We're on like 2 of the last 2 sections today, and we're going to get you over the hump. No worries. 8, yeah. 2. A lot of similar responses. Okay. So just know, I don't want everyone to feel, I know you kind of feel like pressured right now. We're going to try to make this as relaxing setting as possible, okay? So you're going to get a lot of information today thrown at you ahead of time, but know that you will have the slide deck, you will have the resources. So if there is something that you need to go back and you're like, oh my God, I didn't get that, you will have the information. But we're going to go into as many details as possible so we can get this implementation plan on point and your program worksheet on point, budget worksheet on point. So the scope of sequence for today, again, day 3, we're going over the community schools implementation plan and examples and the program budget worksheet and examples. Next slide, please. So we're going to do a quick review. So there was last work group, we went over scoring. So since we're going over the implementation plan, we're just going to go a reminder on how this section is scored. So the CS implementation plan is 10 points of your 100 points. And just remember, every school that is participating in the grant must have their own community schools implementation plan. Next slide, please. Here was the rubric we discussed, that our goal was going to be to make sure that we are aiming for that 7 to 10 points, that strong and outstanding score. Again, you see the rubric and the sections highlighted so you can see the differences in where that score will matter in regards to the plan that you will put together. Next slide, please. So now, this year, the California Department of Education, oh, can you slow down? The California Department of Education put together an implementation plan template for two reasons. Number one, to make sure that cohort 3 applicants, which is everyone that's on this work group, has a plan template to make putting an implementation plan together easier. So they provided a template. Last year they did as well, but with cohort 3 template, it is different. So that is why we're going to go over it in depth, because there were some changes as compared to the template from last year. The second part of this community school implementation plan template was also for current grantees. Once you become a grantee, which I'm sure everybody will on this call, we're going to put it in the air. Once you become an implementation grantee for the grant, every year you're going to be responsible for turning in an updated implementation plan to the state. So there's a twofold with this template. You use it once, if you can get it down packed now on how to use it, every year when it comes to you turning your plan, you already know what to do, and it's going to make the process a whole lot easier. And then below, that is a live link for when you actually get the slide deck that will take you straight to the template. And it was also connected to the resource guide that was given to you. Next slide, please. So with the implementation plan template, the biggest thing is to make sure on here that you are already working on existing objectives, existing things that are already currently going on to your district, and how you're going to do to enhance them. It's not for you to start from scratch with whatever you were doing. I am very confident that everybody on this work group have already kind of started doing some of the little essential foundations of community schools framework within their school district. And then this grant is just to take you to the next level. So you definitely want to enhance that. And on top of that, making sure that the objectives and the goals and action steps that you're putting in this implementation plan is aligning to your current LCAP for your district and the SIPSs at the school site. So that way we're looking more at alignment, not starting over from scratch when you are developing this plan. And most importantly, the part that's in red, we want to make sure that when you are developing this implementation plan, that you are not working in this in silo. This is meant for you to work on as a group, whether you have a steering committee, whether you have an advisory council, whether you have a shared decision-making committee. Again, this is for everyone to work on together. It is not meant for you to work on in silos. Next slide, please. So with the community schools implementation plan template, they refer to two resources as you are working through the template. The two resources that they would like for you to go back and look at as you're filling it out is the California Community Schools Framework, because of how the plan is set up, and then also those capacity building strategies. And again, we're going to go over in that in detail, but these are the two resources that they would like for you to look at as you are completing the implementation plan. Next slide, please. So the main reason for using the California Community Schools Framework book is because in that book, it has the pillars of the community school, the key conditions of learning, the commitments when it comes to community schools, and the proven practices for community schools. So it's giving you a reminder of what direction you need to go through. So whatever you're putting on your implementation plan is reflective of that California Community Schools Framework. Again, that alignment piece as you are developing your plan. Next slide, please. With the capacity building strategies, that resource, they want to make sure that you are focusing on the strategies, the how you're going to implement this implementation plan. And that's all embedded in the capacity building strategies. So that is why that is an important resource. And again, There are 9 strategies that are listed there. And you're about to see a similarity as we go on with why this resource is very, very important to utilize as you are using the implementation plan. Next slide, please. So the capacity building strategies, you have shared understanding and commitment, collective priorities, collaborative leadership, coherence, staffing and sustainability, community partnerships, professional learning, community-based curriculum and pedagogy, and progress monitoring possibility thinking. Now look at the sections of how the implementation plan template looks. They're exactly the same areas. So if you use that resource, you will have no issue completing the implementation plan. They align, and that was done intentionally to make the process easier for grantees and for current grantees as they are submitting their implementation plans annually. So they align with each other. So you're definitely going to want to use that resource. Next slide, please. So this is the part I'm just going to brace everybody for. We're going to end up having a break in the middle of this because this is a lot that you're going to have to digest. But we just wanted to make sure that we was very intentional with details and that you had examples. So that way you can leave with some practical things that you can go right away, go to that plan and work on. So this is going to be a meaty section. I will do my best to go at a good pace. If you need me to slow down, let me know. I will slow down. If you need me to speed up, I will speed up. But this is going to be a lot of information to digest. I just want to give it to you up front and be honest. Next slide, please. So we are going to go through every single strategy section. They call them strategies in the template and give you an explanation of what that section is asking you for and examples on how it should be written. So that way you have a clear understanding of what they're asking for. So again, we're going to go through strategy 1 through 9 on the template. Everybody ready to go? We're good? All right, let's go. Strategy number 1. So strategy number 1 is shared understanding and commitment. The main question that they're asking is, why is a community school for my school district? They want to know your why. You're applying for this grant. You want to be a community school, but why? The 4 values that they would like for you to focus on when you're explaining your why are the overarching values that are part of the community schools framework, which is racially just relationship-centered spaces, shared power, classroom community connections, and a focus on continuous improvement. Those are the 4 areas that your why is going to be focused on. The prompt that they're asking you is to describe the developmental plans for ensuring these values are reflected in your community school's work. So again, a focus on these 4 values. So let's go to the next slide. This is just a quick overview of what each overarching value is. And I just want to show you that it's there for you to go back to if you need to get a definition of it. But I'm going to go into the meat and potatoes of the examples that you are going to need to fill out on this plan. So let's go to the next slide. So the first value, when you're talking about your why, racially just relationship-centered spaces. These are examples that they are looking for when you're talking about plans on why you want to become a community school based on racially just relationship-centered spaces. Diverse curriculum, cultural responsive teaching, multilingual support, student-led initiatives, inclusive events and celebrations, equitable resource allocation, safe spaces and support spaces. These are examples of reasons why you would want to become a community school based on racially just relationship-centered spaces, and there are definitions there for you. So, not saying you have to have all of them, but this is the direction that they're expecting for you to go in. If I say, why do I want to become a community school? Under the value of racially just relationship-centered spaces, they're looking for areas such as these, because these are all examples on how you would provide that at your school site. Everyone's clear on that? Good to go? All right. Next section is if I wanted to share my why on shared power. So this is why shared power is part of my community school philosophy for my school. Because I believe in teacher collaboration and professional learning communities. We work together to make sure that we are given the best teaching strategies and curriculum and student support. We have school governance councils to make sure that we are including parents, school site council, PTA, ELAC, African American Parent Advisory Councils, collaborative planning committees. You have those shared leadership teams, and that we are making sure that we are bringing everyone to the table as we are making decisions. Inclusive hiring practices. We are hiring people on our campus that can not only help us get the vision, but we're including everybody in this process. Not only are there teachers that are there interviewing, we have our classified staff, we have parents that are part of the hiring process. And as you get to secondary, we may have a student that sits on there and helps us. So these will be example of why community schools from a shared power lens. Next slide, please. If I'm talking about why from a classroom community connections, I'm talking about community-based learning projects, guest speakers and community experts, field trips to local businesses and organizations, service learning programs, community partnerships, parent and community volunteer programs, community-driven events. These are the different ways I'm connecting through my community schools model, the classroom to the community. This would be my why under that value. And then the last slide, a focus on continuous improvement. So what's my why under that? We're doing regular data analysis. We all know that we're constantly looking at our California dashboard, right? For which direction we're going. We have feedback loops, whether it's through our Title I parent survey or other surveys that we do as a school to make sure that we're getting the feedback we need. Everyone did this community needs assessment. You have to figure out what your community needs and how you're going to provide those supports and services for your clientele. School culture and climate surveys, community partnerships, again, celebrations of achievements. These are different whys for under the focus of continuous improvement. So it doesn't have to be everything on here, but if you can give a clear example that relates to the values, then you'll have a clear alignment between the why that you're doing it as a community school based on the needs of your site and the why that is part of the California Community Schools framework, which are these overarching values that we just reviewed. I know that was a lot of information. Strategy number 2, we're going to talk about collective priorities, setting goals and taking action. So these are things related to your needs and assets assessment that you did, which is strategy 2. And just making sure that through your needs assessments that you were able to determine what are those main priorities that we need to do in our community school implementation plan, things that we need to make sure that we're covering to ensure that all stakeholders at our school site are getting the help that they need. What strategies are we going to use and how are we going to sustain those strategies and practices over time? Next slide, please. So this part of the implementation plan has a part A and part B prompt. So the part A is asking you to reflect on how you will engage different groups within your school community and identify what do you do to engage them, whether it's surveys, focus groups, or meetings, so the things that you did through your needs assessment. They also want you to describe how will you engage those historically marginalized student and family groups. So students of color, African American students, students with disabilities, immigrants, those who identify as LGBTQ+. So they want you to do that. So let's go to the next slide. So these are examples of how you can do that. You use needs and assessment tools. You did a vision statement. You had a shared leadership team where you made sure you guys went over this information. Rubrics that determine schools' criteria for success, progress monitoring of collective priorities. You did a continuous improvement cycles. So these are different examples that you can do to meet part A of that question. Again, these are just examples to just give you a direction on where you need to go in regards to the answer in this section for part A. I won't read everything, but it's there in the slide deck for you that you're going to be able to refer to. Next is part B. So as your sites were going through the needs and assets assessment process, you were supposed to identify priorities. So they want you to share 3 collective priorities that you anticipate as you achieve deeper engagement with students, staff, families, and community members. There is a special note on that section, and it brings up the whole child and family supports inventory. And what it's asking you to do is with one of the priorities chosen, they want you to relate it to a section on this inventory. So what does that inventory look like? Next slide, please. So this is the whole child and family supports inventory. It was one of the tools that is available for when you are tracking your data and making sure that you're hitting all the sections of the California Community Schools framework, as well as other initiatives that are important in California right now. So currently there are 7 areas that are on this inventory that you can actually hit because they're only asking you to align one of your priorities to them, 1 out of the 7. So the first 4 I know look familiar because those are the 4 pillars of our community schools framework, which is the integrated student supports and services, expanded and enriched learning time, collaborative leadership practices, and community and family engagement. The other 2 are currently other initiatives that are on the California Department of Education website right now, which is, of course, the Positive Restorative School Climate. So that's your PBIS, restorative practices, and community-based curriculum and pedagogy, and other local supports and practices that you guys may be doing as a district that are not part of this list. So how would this look? Next slide, please. So here would be the example. It says, please share 3. On here are 2 examples. So first one, if I found out from my needs assessment that I need to strengthen my family and community engagement. Well, that aligns with family and community engagement that is on that whole child's inventory. And what would be the outcome of that? Well, I'm hoping that if I strengthen family and community engagement, the outcome would be that I would increase my parental involvement. How would I know that outcome? That's if I notice my percentage of parents in school events, workshops, and parent teacher conferences all of a sudden started going up. Then I know my parental involvement is going up. So they want you to have that outcome. And then how are you going to measure that outcome, which is your indicator? A second example would be enhanced holistic student well-being. Well, that aligns with integrated student supports and services. So my outcome can be I want to increase student engagement and motivation. What are one of my indicators? Well, if I'm looking in the area of academics, one of the indicators are going to be the completion of assignments, right? So you have a priority, which is one of those that will align with the whole child's inventory, like one of them here. Your outcome, what is the expected outcome when you're working on that priority? And then how you're going to measure it, which is that indicator. That's going to be how I'm going to determine if this priority I met the outcome successfully. And I was able to hit this key priority. Next slide, please. Next, we have strategy 3, which is collaborative leadership. So we're talking about that shared decision making, making sure that we have all stakeholders at the table. Yes, Jennifer, you can have more than one outcome or indicator per priority. Absolutely. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with a lot, so we just kept the example simple, but absolutely, you can have more than one indicator for your example. So with collaborative leadership, we're talking about shared decision making, bringing all stakeholders to the table as we are trying to make sure that we are hitting the goal of our community school. So this is a 2-part prompt. The first one is asking to describe your goals for strengthening collaborative leadership. The second prompt is asking you to describe your system of shared governance and site level leadership structure at your community school. So at your school site, how does that look? And they gave you an option. You can either write it out or you can make it a visual. So we have those examples for you. Next slide, please. So for part A, first part of the prompt, they're telling you to describe your goals for strengthening collaborative leadership. So they want the goal and then they want the action steps on how you're going to achieve that goal. So first one, I want to establish inclusive decision-making processes, right? I want systems set up in place because this is how we make decisions as a school site to make sure we are doing collaborative leadership. How am I going to do that? I'm going to form collaborative committees or task forces with representation of all of my school community stakeholders. I'm going to have regular forums for discussions in regards to decisions, policies, and initiatives. So again, the goal with the action step. I may want to enhance communication and transparency, right? To make sure that we're all on the same page, we all understand everything. How am I going to do that? I'm going to do that through utilizing multiple communication platforms, whether it's a newsletter, website, social media, text message. And I'm going to make sure that I have a central hub for where all my information is stored so that all my stakeholders have access to it. So this will be an example of how you would strengthen collaborative leadership. Your goals and your action steps. And you can have as many action steps as you want. On average, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 for each one to make it easier for you. If you want to be ambitious and put a lot, that's fine, but sometimes keeping it simple can get the same message as going too detailed. Next slide, please. The second part of your prompt is asking you to describe your system of shared governance or site leadership structure. So this will be an example of a visual, starting off with our school administration, and then our school administration may oversee the Community School Advisory Council. And that Community School Advisory Council might feed into your school leadership team. And then that school leadership team oversees your site decision-based making teams, your family and community engagement teams, and your student leadership teams. A simple visual. It doesn't have to be too complex. You can use that as a response, or you can simply write it out, which is the next slide. You may just say, I have a school leadership team. My principal leads it, is supported by this person, and then these are my core people on the team. We have our site decision-making teams, and this is what they do. And then we have our department leadership, and this is what they do. So again, not too difficult. You can do the visual or you can do the written. It's whatever your team prefers. But either way, whether it's visual or written, it still answers the prompt that they're asking. So I would say just choose what you feel is best. Some people may already have a visual in place that may be in their SIPSA already, or on a strategic plan you have for your school, or maybe a visual that's already up in your on a poster. You can use that and put it in your implementation plan. But these are just 2 ways how you can answer that prompt. Next slide, please. Oh, strategy number 4, coherence, policy, and initiative alignment. So we're just making sure that as you are developing your goals and priorities for community schools, that you're able to see a clear alignment to the LCAP that you have as a district, and then your single plan for school improvement that you have as a site plan, and that they should align so it looks cohesive. So basically, things that are in your community school implementation plan may be things that are already in your single plan for student achievement, and that's already in your LCAP, and vice versa. They may be things that are in your LCAP and SIPSA that may be part of your community schools plan. It's okay. It should all align. So you don't have to go from scratch. You can use information from those sources for this area. So the prompt that they're asking you to do is describe your goals and action steps for establishing policy and initiative alignment. So again, that working smarter. We're not going to do everything in silos. We're going to align everything so that everything aligns and we're all hitting goals in all of these areas. Next slide, please. So how would that look? So if I'm describing goals and action steps for establishing policy and initiative alignment, what am I going to do basically on my end to ensure that my initiatives and policies that are for the district, that are for my school site, and for community schools implementation plan all align? I may want to conduct a comprehensive policy review where I get a group of teachers, a group of parents, community members, and we look at all the different initiatives and see how they align to the California Community Schools framework, right? That way I'm making sure they're aligned and I have multiple people in the room helping me with this. We may want to monitor and evaluate implementation. So making sure that as you align these policies, that you are making sure that they're being implemented with fidelity and that you're progress monitoring. So if I'm progress monitoring for my California Community Schools implementation plan, that same progress monitoring, I can still use those same steps for my single plan for student achievement. Again, that alignment piece, because you don't want your implementation plan to be fighting with your single plan for student achievement. You don't want it to fight with your LCAP. They should all go smoothly together and there should be similarities among the different plans. So you're not working on a bunch of things in silo. And they just want to make sure that you're doing that. So they're asking you for the goal on how you're going to make sure that occurs and what action steps you're going to take. So that was a lot of information. Do you guys want to take a stretch now, or would you like for me to keep going? I can keep going. Thumbs up in the chat, or where are you at? Thumbs up. Keep going. Stretch, please. Take break. Okay, I have a break. I said it was a lot of information. So just take a break for a minute to kind of just marinate on those 4 strategies because we have 5 more to go. So you can take a stretch and we'll just do a couple of minutes. We won't do all 5. So Stephanie, if you can
It looks like Dr. Kemp is having some tech issues. We'll take another minute or two to figure that out. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
hire diverse multilingual staff to support site level work, including an LEA level community school director and coordinator. So example of a goal will just be making sure that you assess staffing needs, right? You don't know what type of staff that you're going to put as part of your community school implementation plan unless you actually know what kind of staffing do we need. So that's just making sure that you're doing a thorough analysis of the student population and determine what their needs are. And then what are key areas where staffing adjustments need to be made? Because sometimes it may just be readjusting a position, not necessarily hiring a whole nother person. So making sure that you're going through that process to ensure that you are set up for success with staffing. And second example would be define the role of site level coordinators, right? So if you took the time to say, my school site needs this level coordinator, well, what are those responsibilities? And do those responsibilities match those needs that you're stating in your implementation plan and in your actual implementation grant application? So that's going to be essential. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Also.
Next is, second part of the prompt is schools hire site level coordinators, both sites and systems, to develop sustainability plans. So this is where you need to make sure that you're going to name the different positions that you are going to be hiring during that process of the grant. So it can be a site level coordinator or director, and then making sure what are their main roles are going to be and their examples written there. You may want a family engagement specialist because you're trying to work on strengthening family and community engagement. So I'm going to get an engagement specialist just for that. And then making sure how will they function at the school site level? What does that role look like? And then you may want a community outreach coordinator. I'm trying to get community partnerships that match my priorities. So I need a coordinator that's going to help me with this. Also making sure I'm getting stakeholders on campus for when we have events. So I need that outreach coordinator, and this is what they're going to be responsible for. So these are just examples of different roles that you can have as part of your community schools implementation plan. And as part of your implementation grant application, you just need to make sure that whatever roles that you have decided that you're going to implement into your plan, that they actually match what you are trying to do. You can't say I'm strengthening family engagement and then you have no key role in there that's going to be working on that. Everything has to align. And yes, I can include district level roles on the resource for you, not a problem. Next slide, please. The second part of prompt, they want you to describe plans or steps you are considering to build sustainability beyond the life of your implementation grant. We all know that I did not use a funding example intentionally because we all know one of the things to sustainability is making sure that we have those funds there. So making sure that you are allocating those dollar amounts to continue whatever key roles that you hire so they last past the lifetime of the grant. But when you're talking about sustainability, you're not only talking about funding, you're talking about keeping some of those services and programs that you started as part of this community schools journey. So it could be strategic partnership development, right? You've worked really hard at making sure that you have the best community partners for your school site. What are you going to do to ensure, what kind of plan are you going to set up to ensure that we're constantly making sure that we have community partners that match the priorities of our school? How do we sustain that practice? Also, capacity building and professional development. With community schools, there's going to be training that your staff members are going to need. So as you finish your community schools grant, how do you continue to sustain that capacity building and that professional development piece that you did during the grant, making sure that that stays sustainable after the lifetime of the grant? So besides funding, you need to think about strategies, services, programs that you're working to sustain, because these have been the things that have been successful to improve student learning outcomes. So we want to make sure we continue those things past the lifetime, past the life of the grant. which is the 5 years. Next part, please. And this will be like examples of different ways that you can do sustainability and staffing as well with some of the strategies. So this was just a resource slide for you guys to also have. Next slide, please. Again, these are district examples because I know that was asked. Do you have district examples? Here's district examples. Sustainability again is more than just the key roles, is services, is programs, is funding, is a little bit of everything. So it's a meaty question with 3 parts. That's why we made sure to break down each section on the PowerPoint slide, but you can always refer to it later when you receive the slide deck. Next slide, please. Strategy 6 is strategic community partnerships. So again, during your community schools journey that you're going to take once you receive your grant, what are you doing to build strategic community partnerships? And when they mean strategic, community partnerships that meet the priorities of your school site. Again, you can get community partners all day, but if they are not helping with the vision of your school, they're not helping with the priorities of your school, you're not going to see those positive student learning outcomes that you hope to see as a result of the community school strategy. So there are 2 parts to this prompt. The first one is they want you to demonstrate your goals and action steps to ensure that community partners are actively involved in planning, development, and continuous improvement of the community school. So not only should they be there helping your students, they should also be helping with that decision-making, the shared decision-making that we talked about earlier with that collaborative leadership to ensure that you are going in the right direction. And how can they help you with maybe a hole that you're not able to assist with? That community partner should be able to step up. The second part of the prompt is asking you to describe the partnerships you have established or plan to establish. So again, you don't have to have your partners chosen right now, but you can have an idea of what direction you're going and list some of those potential partners. And then how will they be responsive to the vision and priorities of the students, staff, families, and community members at your school site? Next slide, please. So let's talk about the first part of the prompt, which they want you to demonstrate your goals and action steps to ensure community partners are actively involved in the planning, development, and continuous improvement of the community school. So one goal can be collaborative program planning and design, right? Making these community partners a partner in deciding how are you going to implement certain services and programs at the school site and how they're going to be a major part of it to ensure that they're helping you implement those services and programs at the site. So anywhere from planning regular planning sessions and meetings, having open dialogues to discuss about the priority needs of the school and the community, having a joint task force or committee that may deal with wellness, academic enrichment, family engagement, any area you can think of, but just making sure that they are part of the planning process. You may want to do professional development and training for community partners. Remember, when you're getting these partners, they don't know everything that's going on at the school site. May not even not know how a school site actually functions and the operations. So you may need to do training for them to ensure that they're doing what you need them to do for your school site. You're guiding them. And part of that is collaborating with them. So that's why it's important to be very strategic with your community partnerships. So how are you going to do that? I'm going to give orientation. I'm going to do a training series for them. I'm going to offer ongoing professional development. So whenever a new initiative come up in the district, they're going to be part of a training. So they're aware of that initiative. So they know how to move and shake within your system. And then cross training, right? Making sure that you are also getting trained on what they do as a partner so that you're well versed for when parents ask you, what are you offering? You know off the top of your head what you need to do. So those will be examples of goals and action steps in the planning, development, and continuous improvement process. Next slide, please. The second part is What partnerships have you established or plan to establish, and how do those partners are going to be responsive to the vision, priorities of the students, staff, families, and community partners? So for the first part, you're just going to provide a list. It may be, you may have a focus on wellness. So you may have a list like Care Solace, South Coast Counseling. So those may be community partners that you have. Then from that point, you're going to describe how are those community partners going to meet the priorities of your school site? So a priority is wellness. So Care Solace, they're going to make sure to refer parents to the mental health programs that they need outside of the school site, because we can only do this much at school, but I have kids that need ongoing services, right? So give that description. So examples of being responsive to the vision, there were 3 listed below. So one was under cultural competence and sensitivity. So you may be tailoring programs and services to reflect the diversity and cultural nuances of the community, right? If you're doing family engagement initiatives, you're offering workshops, family nights, and other events that provide resources to support and supports for families. Again, I just used the example of health and wellness programs. You may have those partnerships offer workshops, screenings, and resources related to physical and mental health. So those will just be ways of how they're going to respond to the vision and priorities of your school. Strategy 7, and we have 2 more to go after this, and we're done with strategies. So strategy number 7 is professional learning. So how will professional learning enhance collaboration and coordination and provide opportunities, right? So the prompt will be to describe your goals and action steps for professional learning opportunities specific to the community school strategy. So example goal may be you want to cultivate a holistic understanding of community schools. How are you going to do that? You're going to provide training sessions that explore the core principles and components of the community school model, because everybody may not know what that means. So you need to make sure to provide them with the training they needed. Offer resources and case studies that show how schools have successfully implemented the community schools framework. So that would be action steps that you can use if you're trying to give people a deeper understanding of community schools. You may want to strengthen your collaborative practices, because the community school model is very collaborative, but I may have teachers that are not comfortable with that. I may have family members that may not feel welcome at school and may feel intimidated because they don't have the same educational level as a teacher. So I want to strengthen my collaborative practices. So I'm going to offer workshops on effective strategies on how staff members and community partners and stakeholders can engage with one another. I'm going to encourage team building activities when I am doing committee meetings or school site council or PTA, to ensure that they know that they are a part of this environment just as much as my teachers, just as much as my staff, just as much as the students. So these would be action steps and goals that will show professional learning opportunities as part of community school strategy. Next slide, please. Strategy 8, sharing community-based curriculum and pedagogy. So right now, we all know that we have our Common Core framework that all of our teachers and everybody uses in the state of California. But when you're going community schools, it goes a lot deeper than that. We want to make sure that as a community school, that our students, staff, community members actually understand what's going on in their local community and have a true understanding about it, and that their cultures and their ethnicity is well represented in the curriculum. So the prompt is describe your goals and action steps to assist educators in learning the theoretical roots and practical elements of community-based learning. So one is they may need to learn what actually community-based learning is, right? I've never done this before, but this is an important part of implementing the community schools framework. So you may want to conduct some professional developments where teachers can learn how to do community-based learning activities in the classroom and give example and have those trainers give examples and show demonstration lessons. Those will be action steps. Another one would be, what is the whole premise? Why is community-based learning so important, right? So having workshops not only for our teachers that will be introducing it, but for our families and our students, so they understand Why are they receiving this curriculum? Why is it so important? Provide resources and reading so they can deepen their understanding. So again, goals and action steps that make sure that you're centering community-based curriculum and pedagogy as you're implementing the California Community Schools Framework. Next slide, please. And again, these are examples at the site level and at the LEA level that can also assist with providing you some direction as you try to give the correct goals and action steps for your school site that you are going to implement. Next slide, please. Strategy number 9, progress monitoring and possibility thinking. So basically, this is continuous improvement, right? How are you making sure that your community schools implementation is successful? How are you making sure that you're getting those positive student learning outcomes? So you need to do progress monitoring, right? And possibility thinking. So there are 2 prompts. One is describe how your site with educational partners will explore the development of an evaluation plan for the Community Schools Initiative rooted in local data and measures. So your dashboard, your data that you use for LCAP, that allows for diverse community-based definitions of success. So do you have success criteria? How do you know a student is successful, right? Describe how you are developing metrics to gauge success and to guide their work and identify those potential outcomes and indicators. So let's go to the first part of the prompt. Next slide, please. So let's talk about, we're going to talk about how do we measure success? Well, I want to identify some key performance indicators, right? So as a team, we're going to sit down and determine, what does a successful student look like? How do we measure that? And it's going to take a team to do that. So I'm going to collaborate with some educational partners to identify what are some key performance indicators that will get us to our desired outcomes as a school. What does it look like academically, with attendance, with parental involvement, with community partnerships, student well-being? And some outcome and indicators, once those things are set up, can be, you may increase your academic performance. You may increase attendance and engagement. You may enhance parent and community involvement. So you know, through these actions of determining what success looks like, you're getting these outcomes. Transparent reporting and communication, right? Making sure that as you are getting data, that you're sharing that with your parents. So this is what we have for data, but this is where we're trying to go. Sometimes parents and community members and students just need to know, where are those gaps at so I can get better, so I can improve. So just making sure you're very transparent with reporting and communicating data, different data, whether it's social emotional data, whether it's behavior data, whether it's academic, whether it's physical health, just reporting that data so that we're all aware of what's going on. And then outcome of indicators, when those things are aligned, again, increase parental engagement. Students can feel empowered because, wow, this is where I was at, and now look how much work I've done. Informed decision-making by educators, right? If we know that there's data that's shared with us at the district and admin level that our teachers don't have access to, giving them the information so they know what they need to do in a classroom to ensure that students are successful. And then making sure that those values and priorities are all aligned with your plans, with your LCAP, with your single plan for student achievement, and with your community schools implementation plan. One example that our wonderful coordinator has put in the chat is when you have a graduate profile, right? And that's really good for our students that are in high school. They know they need this many credits, right? You're trying to go to this school, you need to hit these A through G requirements. You're trying to hit this trade, you need to have these skills. So just making sure that there is a clear understanding of what success looks like. Next slide, please. Again, these are samples and examples on how you can do that to ensure that you are implementing progress monitoring and possibility thinking. Next slide. And this is from the LEA level. So different data and measures that you can look at and possibly share with the community in regards to data that's needed when you are trying to determine successful performance indicators. Next slide, please. Are you guys good to keep going? I'm just trying to do check-ins with everybody. Okay, we're going to keep going. Next slide, please. So that is everything for the community schools implementation plan. It's just those 9 areas. Now we're going to go into the program budget worksheet, which has been a big question for a lot of people. So I will do my best to get this section explained. So the scoring of the application, just always going back to that, the program budget worksheet is worth 10 points of the 100 points. Next slide, please. There is a rubric that is connected to your RFA. And remember, the goal is you want to stay between strong and outstanding. And as you can see, the differences is making sure you are clear and include a comprehensive estimate that you clearly identify and they relate to the project abstract. So again, emphasizing the budget that you put together should align with the project that you are choosing for your implementation grant application. They should align. And the reminder that as a LEA, as a district, whatever funding that you're receiving, you're responsible for matching 1/3 of it. So that can also be reflected in the program budget worksheet. Next slide, please. So let's go through the program budget worksheet examples and reminders. Next slide. So there was a program budget worksheet that was provided within the application with 9 tabs. The first tab breaks down instructions. The second tab is applicant information, contact information, budget summary, and then a budget from year 1 to year 5. So, and we're going to get to your question, Jennifer. Next slide. So the program budget, the applicant information section, very, very simple. You just have your LEA name, your CDS code, the total requested amount, and the total requested amount should not exceed what you are qualifying for in regards to your funding level. And we're going to go through that. Your superintendent's name or designee, and your superintendent signature and approval. You cannot submit the application without approval from your superintendent or your superintendent designee. They will not accept the application, so please make sure that you have that signature. And it does need to be on your program budget worksheet. So I just want to emphasize that. Next slide, please. For your contact information, who's going to be the main contact for your grant application? And then who is the main fiscal person who is working with you with the grant application? All that information needs to be on there. Name, their title, their phone number, and email. Please make sure that everything is written clearly. There's no typos, because you don't want someone calling you regarding this budget and then the phone number is on there wrong or the email is on there wrong. So just make sure you're taking your time completing this section. Next slide, please. So your program budget worksheet, there is one tab that says budget summary. And as this is what it looks like. This is a screenshot. The budget summary tab does not need to be completed. What is going to happen is when you fill out the year 1 tab, the year 2 tab, the year 3 tab, the year 4 tab, and the year 5 tab, this tab will automatically populate with whatever you're putting in the other tabs. So you do not have to do anything to this page. All the information is going to come from the tabs that say year 1 through year 5. Okay. So I just want to make sure it is that. Total requested amount, it would be for the entire 5 years. And I have a chart for you guys so you guys can see that coming up. And then again, refer to this budget summary tab for the object codes and budget items to consider when creating your budget. So they lay them right here. All you have to do is be clear. You don't have to be so detailed. Just clear enough to where they understand the budget that you're setting up matches your project abstract, okay? So I know this may seem like a very tedious tab, but it's a little easier than we think. Next slide, please. So this is what tabs 1 through 5 look like for year 1. And again, you're just going to enter the object code. When it says line detail and narrative, you can maybe say the code for like certificated personnel. The line detail may be community school coordinator. What's the cost, right? I mean, that's simple. You don't have to put, I have a community school coordinator that's going to do X, Y, and Z. No, just put what that budget is going to be for and make sure the code matches and, excuse me, and the amount match. Next slide. So this is the part that we're all speaking of is what are we looking at budget allocation per site? So again, you need to look at where you're at as a school site. And remember, you have multiple schools applying for this. Some people have 2 or 3 schools. So the budget may look different for each school, and that needs to be reflected in the budget. So again, you have your very small to your large. So you need to look at your population to determine how much that you qualify for. So right here, again, if I'm a very small school, I know the most I can get will be $356,500 from the state. And this is the amount that I have for each year, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you have to look at your funding levels when you're trying to figure out the total amount that's being requested. So again, it depends on the size of your school site that determines how much you get. If applying for the whole LEA for service to benefit, we would apply for large, correct? I want to say it's per school site, is not as a whole. Is whatever amount they have per school. So if it's the whole LEA, I'm going to have to get specific questions on that, Lauren, later, okay? So I'll stay after for questions for that one. Next slide, please. Okay. This is where we're going to talk about that 33% matching requirement by LEAs, okay? So no, this is not something that CDE did. This was something I sat down and did the math for you guys. So you guys wouldn't have to worry about it because it can be a little tedious. But if I'm a very small school, and let's say I'm with ABC Elementary School and I have 15 students. Well, I know the max that I will get over 5 years is $356,500. As a site, I am responsible for matching $117,645. Okay. So the part that is in red is the matching that you are responsible for as a district with whatever size your school is. So if my school fits under medium large and I qualify for $400,000 a year, then the most I can apply for is $1,900,000. And I'm probably gonna have to contribute $627,000. So this is an approximate, okay? It may not be the exact, but this is an approximate based off of the numbers that are given. But whatever it is, you're responsible for 33% of what you ask for. And some people may not ask for the full amount of the grant. If I'm a very small school and I don't need 75,000 and I only need 50,000, then I'm only going to be responsible for matching a third of the 50,000, not a third of the 75,000. It's a third of whatever amount you're asking for that you qualify for. So again, the black numbers are what the state is saying you qualified for, and the red numbers is just approximate of what that 33% would look like for your district, depending upon what funding level you qualify for. Okay. And then there's a special note at the bottom. The match can be contributed as cash or services or resources. Okay. So it's just whatever is determined by the CDE. That's the notation that they have on the program budget section within the RFA. So I hope this helps some with seeing this is what the state can give me and this is what I may have to contribute as a district. And you want to be reflective of this when you're plugging it in the program budget worksheet. Okay, can the match portion of the budget be a cap allocation? It can. I want to say there is a section for that, but I can find out that question for you from CDE to get you a clear answer, because I don't want to guide you in the wrong direction. You're welcome. Next slide, please. So here are some reminders. Again, with the funding levels, CDE reserves the right to fund the applications at a lesser amount than what you actually apply for. So let's say you qualified for 400,000, up to 400,000, but they say, we're only going to qualify you for 360. They're able to do that. Okay. So make sure when you're doing your funding that it's as realistic as it can be. You know, of course, we always budget at the higher level, right? Just so we can make sure that we hit the minimum, and it's okay to do that. But you guys do need to know that is a possibility that CDE is able to do that at their discretion. So you should know that. The fund distribution, they're going to hold up to 10% of the grant funds and give that to you after you have met the compliance of the grant, meaning that when you receive the grant, we're not going to say if, when you receive the grant, because we're going to put positive vibes in the air, they're going to hold up to 10% of it to ensure that you have met whatever they asked you to do, whatever deliverable they've asked you to turn in, progress report, sustainability report, all of that. They're going to hold it until you turn all that in, and then you will receive those funds. So they will do that. Allowable activities and cost. Okay. All expenditures must contribute to what you are trying to do with your program that is in your project abstract. And that project abstract needs to be something that's going to lead to improved student outcomes. Budgets that include non-allowable, excessive, and inappropriate items will receive a lower score. So it's going to be very, very, very important that you look at page 11 and 12 on your RFA to assure that the amounts, the activities, the expenditures that you are putting in are allowable. Okay, so that's going to be very, very, very important. And at any time, CDE can ask you to revise your budget if that's going to help you get approved for the grant. I don't know how often that happens, but you do need to know that they can ask for you to do that as part of a requirement to qualify for the grant. Non-allowable activities and cost. Supplanting existing services and funds. This is a hot area that they are looking at on your program budget worksheet. In regards to what those non-allowable and activities and costs are, is on page 12 to 13 of your RFA. And the next slide is going to give you examples of what supplanting means, because I think we all need to have a clear understanding of that. So next slide, please. So examples of supplanting existing services and funds. So I have an existing service where the school collaborates with a local mental health organization to provide counseling services for students. It's already funded through your current budget that you have, whether it's through Title I, site discretionary, it's already funded. You apply for this grant, and now you use that grant to apply for something you already have existing. That is considered supplanting. You cannot do that. Okay. Another one would be if it was a staffing situation where You have special education teachers and support staff that's funded by a special education budget, and you're using it to meet the needs of students with disabilities. Well, if all of a sudden you say, I got this grant, I'm not going to use this budget anymore so I can free up some money and I'm going to use my grant instead. You cannot do that. So whatever roles or key positions that you are putting in this grant, it cannot be a position that you currently have funded. It has to be something that is not currently funded by your budget. Same thing with a service. It cannot be a service that you currently have. And then you're like, okay, I have this money, but I'm going to use the grant instead. You cannot do that. That is what they're talking about, supplanting existing services and funds as far as paying it through the grant. So, that I can find out for you, Dr. McNair. That's a very good question. I'll find out. But these are the definitions of what they have for supplanting, and these were just examples in regards to what does that look like. Next slide, please. Another part on there, they talk about administrative indirect cost is a section that is on the budget worksheet. And for LEAs on your budget, you must limit the amount of indirect cost. An indirect cost is anything that is not being strictly a service or program given straight to the student. Those are indirect costs. So examples of administrative indirect costs is like, for example, a salary. So you have your principal, your assistant principal, your secretary. Yeah, they're there to support the school, but it's an indirect cost because it's not going directly to a program for a student or directly for services for that student. Office supplies and equipment, utilities and facility maintenance, technological infrastructure, and professional development for admin staff. Those are all considered indirect costs. Okay, so you really have to be careful. Not that you can't budget for them, but you really need to limit the amount that you budget. So there is this, when this slide deck is shared with you, there's a link that you see right there under the second bullet point that actually gives you how much you are able to use for indirect cost for the grant. So they did spell it out for you. You just have to go to the link and look it up. So once you receive the slide deck, you can click on it and it will take you right there to that site that you need to look at. But it's just a very important reminder that you need to know for the grant. Next slide, please. Oh, we're at the end. Now, I know one of the biggest things that I was really trying to find for you guys was an already completed program budget worksheet. Due to some of the changes, I could not find one. There's not one that's recently out. I'm going to continue to look for you guys. And if I can find one, I will forward it to everyone that's on this call, okay? But I was looking because I know that was something that you guys physically wanted to see. I was a little disappointed that I couldn't get it to you guys because all of them were non-relevant to what we're trying to do, and I did not want to steer you in the wrong direction or give you anything that you could not use or that it would take forever to pick apart, because that wasn't the purpose of this work group. The purpose of this work group was to make things easier for you as you're filling out the grant application. So if I can definitely find one for you, I will continue to look. I am still looking, and I will make sure to get that to you guys. I know there are budget questions in the chat that we're looking at, and I will make sure to contact CDE to get those answers for you. We have a transcript of the chat that we can keep, and I will make sure to get those questions answered. So it is questions time, and I see some questions, or you can raise your hand and I can answer those questions. One that came on here is a table of contents, one for each school and for the LEA. Okay. It's actually something really, really simple. So there are 3 attachments that require for you to have a table of contents. It's the planning artifacts, the implementation plan, and it was the area on, I think it was like needs assessment. So this is what they're asking you to do. If I'm on this attachment and I have to attach a implementation plan for each side applying, they just want you to have a cover that says ABC school pages 1 through 9. HDF middle school, their pages 6 through 10. That's all they want you to do is just reference the table of contents that shows these are all of the implementation plans you're about to look at and what page numbers they're in order on. So that's what they're asking for. Just very simple. It doesn't have to be anything like really detailed where you're like listing out what each section is. No, you just need to put the school. This is the implementation plan for this school and their pages 1 through 6. This is the implementation plan for the next school and their pages 7 through 15. Just very, very simple. So that's what they mean by having a table of contents, so they know what schools are in the attachment and what pages that they're going to be referred to on. I hope that answers that question.